If you ask me, there is nothing quite like the atmosphere of a grand, isolated estate to bring out the absolute best and worst in our characters. Back in the day, we would spend months watching a super couple navigate secret passages and hidden dungeons, their love and resilience tested by the damp stone walls and the looming threat of a madman. Today, that same creeping dread returned as Carly and Lucas navigated the shadowy corridors of the estate. They were not there for a romantic adventure, but on a desperate, terrifying rescue mission. Their objective was clear: find Jocelyn and Liesel, who had been swallowed up by the darkness of this conspiracy. Watching them move through the estate, I could not help but feel a deep wave of nostalgia mixed with intense anxiety. The stakes have never felt higher, and the isolation of the island provided the perfect, claustrophobic backdrop for the nightmare that was about to unfold. Let us take a moment to reflect on the sheer willpower of Carly. Throughout the decades, we have seen her transform from a reckless young woman into a fierce, unstoppable matriarch. Her character integrity has always been rooted in her absolute, ferocious devotion to her children. When Jocelyn went missing, there was never a doubt in my mind that Carly would tear down the world to find her. This is a woman who has stood against mobsters, psychopaths, and corrupt authorities without blinking an eye. Seeing her risk her own freedom and life to infiltrate the castle is entirely consistent with the mother we have watched for over 20 years. She did not wait for the police. She took matters into her own hands, driven by that primal instinct to protect her daughter. It is this unwavering consistency that makes her a true legacy character, anchoring the narrative even when the plots become overwhelmingly complex. And then we have Lucas standing right by her side. It warms my heart to see Lucas taking such an active, dangerous role in this storyline. As a legacy character himself, carrying the weight of his family's complex history, his decision to accompany Carly speaks volumes about his loyalty and bravery. He knows the dangers, he knows the kind of monsters that lurk in the shadows of that island. Yet, he did not hesitate to help a desperate mother. Their dynamic as they breached the fortress was a beautiful testament to the enduring bonds of family that this show has always championed. They moved with a shared purpose, their silent communication reflecting years of shared trauma and survival. It is in these quiet, tense moments of infiltration that the true strength of long-term storytelling shines, reminding us of the deep roots these characters share. However, all their careful planning and stealth were violently interrupted by a ghost from the past. When Carly and Lucas turned a corner and came face to face with the man they believed to be Nathan, my heart stopped. Imagine the sheer psychological whiplash of seeing a trusted, beloved face in the heart of enemy territory. For a brief, agonizing second, they must have felt a surge of hope, believing that a good man was there to help them. But we, the audience, knew the chilling truth. This was not Nathan. This was Cassius, the twin brother hiding behind a stolen identity, perpetuating a cruel illusion. The manipulation of Nathan's heroic image is deeply unsettling. It twists the knife for those of us who mourned his loss, turning a symbol of justice into a tool of deception. In that tense standoff, the internal panic radiating from Cassius was palpable. For months, he has carefully constructed this fragile house of cards, living a lie that required constant vigilance. Encountering Carly and Lucas was his absolute worst-case scenario. If he allowed them to proceed, they would inevitably discover Jocelyn and Liesel locked away in the dungeons. The moment those four legacy characters connected the dots, the charade would be over. The truth about Cassius, his true identity, and his complicity in this massive, sinister plot would be exposed to the light of day. He realized in a fraction of a second that his entire existence in our town was on the verge of total annihilation. The desperate preservation of his secret became his only priority, overriding any lingering sense of morality he might have possessed. Driven by this sheer, unadulterated fear of exposure, Cassius made a brutal, unforgivable choice. He could not risk a conversation. He could not risk them slipping away. With cold, calculated precision, he launched a preemptive strike. Watching him physically attack Carly and Lucas, knocking them unconscious before they could fully comprehend the betrayal, was incredibly difficult to stomach. This was violence born of cowardice. It was the desperate flailing of a man who knows he is trapped in a web of his own making. As he dragged their unconscious bodies into the depths of the castle, sealing them behind heavy iron doors, I felt a profound sadness for the legacy of the face he wears. He threw them into the very cell holding Jocelyn and Liesel, effectively consolidating his problem but dramatically escalating the stakes. When Carly and Lucas finally regained consciousness, the scene that unfolded was a masterclass in emotional devastation. Waking up in a cold, unforgiving cell, only to realize they were sharing this nightmare with Jocelyn and Liesel, created a moment of profound tragedy and relief. The reunion of a mother and daughter in such bleak circumstances is the kind of raw, emotional storytelling that defines the golden era of soap operas. Carly finally found Jocelyn, but at the cost of their mutual freedom. The four of them, bound by circumstance and shared history, found themselves completely at the mercy of a man wearing a hero's face. The psychological toll of being trapped by someone they thought they could trust added a layer of horrific irony to their captivity, but the narrative did not simply leave them to languish in the dark. Cassius returned to the cell, and the shift in his demeanor was incredibly fascinating to analyze. He no longer carried the arrogant swagger of a mastermind in control. Instead, he stood before his captives as a deeply cornered man. The weight of his actions was clearly crushing him. He knew that by imprisoning four prominent figures of our town, he had crossed a line from which there was no return. The authorities, the mob, and every powerful family would descend upon the island once their disappearance was noted. Cassius was staring down the barrel of his own demise, and in that moment of absolute vulnerability, he decided to change the rules of the game entirely. Standing before the furious and terrified group, Cassius dropped a revelation that completely altered the trajectory of this storyline. He confessed that he was not the architect of this nightmare. The true puppet master, the man pulling the strings and orchestrating the kidnapping and the chaos, was none other than Ross. This admission sent shockwaves through the cell and through my living room. By naming Ross, Cassius was effectively tearing down the hierarchy of the villainous organization he served. It was a stunning moment of betrayal against his own superior. For the veteran viewer, it is always thrilling to watch the villains turn on each other, as it exposes the inherent fragility of alliances built on greed and malice. Cassius was offering them the head of the snake. Then came the proposition, a deal so audacious it could only happen in the heightened reality of our favorite daytime drama. Cassius offered to be their savior. He promised to help Carly, Lucas, Jocelyn, and Liesel escape the fortress unharmed. Furthermore, he pledged to use his insider knowledge to permanently take down Ross, eliminating the overarching threat to their lives. But this salvation came with a steep, bitter price. In exchange for their lives and the destruction of Ross, the four captives had to swear absolute secrecy. They could never reveal his true identity as Cassius, nor could they expose the crimes he had committed under the guise of his brother. Once Ross was dealt with, Cassius would vanish from the town forever, taking his dark secrets into exile. If you ask me, this is the kind of moral dilemma that elevates a simple kidnapping plot into a profound, psychological study. Can these four fiercely independent, deeply wronged individuals make a pact with the devil to save themselves? For Carly, the choice is agonizing. Her character integrity demands justice and retribution for the trauma inflicted upon Jocelyn. Yet, her maternal instinct screams at her to take any deal that ensures her daughter walks out of that castle alive. Liesel, who has her own complex history of villainy and redemption, likely recognizes the pragmatic value of Cassius's offer. Lucas and Jocelyn, representing the younger generation of legacy characters, are forced to weigh the heavy burden of carrying a toxic secret against the immediate necessity of survival. It is a brilliant, agonizing stalemate. Should they accept this unholy alliance, the power dynamic on the island will violently invert. Ross currently believes he holds all the cards, secure in his fortress and confident in his subordinates' loyalty. He has no idea that Cassius is actively plotting his downfall from within the very dungeons he controls. The prospect of Cassius, Carly, Lucas, Jocelyn, and Liesel uniting their formidable intellects and fierce determination against Ross is incredibly exciting. Ross has underestimated the maternal fury of Carly and the desperate self-preservation of Cassius. This secret pact essentially signs Ross's death warrant. The climax of this island nightmare will not be a simple rescue. It will be a calculated, devastating takedown of a man who thought he was untouchable. As we watch this storyline unfold, I cannot help but mourn the tragedy of Cassius's existence. He has weaponized the memory of a beloved character, causing immeasurable pain to those who still grieve. Yet, his willingness to walk away, to accept permanent exile as the cost of his redemption, shows a microscopic glimmer of humanity. Perhaps he realizes that he can never truly be the man whose face he wears. By leaving forever, he offers the town a chance to heal, to finally lay the ghost of Nathan to rest without the lingering taint of this horrific impersonation. It is a bittersweet resolution, one that honors long-term storytelling by acknowledging that some wounds can only heal with distance and silence. In conclusion, my dear friends, despite the convoluted twists, the stolen identities, and the dark dungeons, This is exactly why we have remained loyal to this show for decades. The writers continue to test our beloved legacy characters, pushing them to their absolute limits to reveal the unbreakable strength within. Watching Carly fight for her daughter, seeing Lucas stand tall, and witnessing the complex, gray morality of survival reminds me of the golden era of soap operas. The landscape may change, and the faces may deceive us, but the core essence of love, sacrifice, and fierce resilience remains beautifully intact. I will be sitting right here, tea in hand, eagerly waiting to see if they take the deal, and watching as the mighty walls of that castle finally come tumbling down.